All right, guys. So 7.2 honors solve equations with variables on both sides. We're going to have variables on both sides of the equal sign. Okay. How do you use inverse operations to solve equations with variables on both sides? Inverse just means opposite. So if we are multiplying, we want to divide. If we are subtracting, we want to add. Okay, so that's what we want to look at. We're still isolating the variable, balancing the equation. So we need to evaluate all the way through, okay, guys? So the first thing I do is I separate my terms. Remember, terms are separated by subtraction plus and equal signs. So I'm going to separate them. On each side of the equation, what I figure out is I've got these two right here, these two terms that I can combine. And that's what we want to do, is figure out how to combine those terms first. So I'm going to bring the 96 down, and I'm going to combine a negative 4.5y and a negative 3.2y, which equals a negative 7.7y, or 7 7/10, right? Then we're going to put an equal sign. We cannot separate these two, so I'm going to just drop this stuff down. 5 6/10 y plus 42 8/10. Now, here's the point. I need to get the y's on one side, okay, any terms that involve y, and any terms that do not involve anything on the other side. So when I do this, I'm going to be looking at my notes over here, and I'm going to be balancing this out, okay? Now, guys, when I evaluate this, what I really want to look at is there a way to do this without having negative numbers? If there's not, then we just have to do it. If there is, then we try to do it that way, because it doesn't matter which side I put these on. In other words, if I bring the negative 7 7/10 y over to the other side, it becomes a positive 7 7/10 y. And that positive number, that's what we want, okay? In other words, what I'm saying is this. In order to get rid of 7 7/10 y, I'm going to add 7 7/10 y, okay? That cancels this out. So I only have 96 left on this side. But I can't do anything on one side of the equation without doing it on the other side of the equation. So I'm going to add 7 7/10 y to this side. So in other words, we get 96 equals, and then I add these two together. What is that? 12, 13. So 13 3/10 y. I want to make sure I got that right. So 13 3/10 y, yep, plus 42 8/10. Now I need to bring the 42 8/10 over to the 96. Since I'm adding it here, I would subtract. We want to make it 0, because then 0 plus 13 3/10 y is just simply 13 3/10 y. This cancels out. But don't forget, anything I do on that side, I have to do on this side. Okay? So when I do that, I end up getting 53 2/10 equals 13 3/10 y. Okay, guys? Now, at this point, we still have to isolate y. Okay? So I'm going to erase some of this up here, and I'm going to rewrite it so you guys can see exactly what I'm doing. So if you didn't get that first part, make sure you pause it and write it down. So what we're at right now is 53 2/10 equals 13 3/10 y. Now, we're still doing the same thing, guys. We're isolating the variable. We want y by itself. We can find out what it's equal to. But this time, instead of adding and subtracting stuff, because we're multiplying times y, we need to divide. So 13 3/10, I'm going to divide by 13 3/10 on this side also. Now notice, when I go through and isolate the variable and balance the equation, if I'm multiplying and dividing, I want it to equal 1. Because 13 3/10 divided by 13 3/10 is 1. 1 multiplied by y is still y. This cancels out, and y is isolated like we want, okay? When I divide these two, I actually get 4. So y is equal to 4. If I were to go through and plug these in for y all the way through, and I solve this, then it would prove that 4 was the correct answer. Okay, guys? So a little bit of tough stuff. This is going to take a lot of steps and a lot of time. So what I'm going to do here is number 7, Excel number 7. Now this one was really tough, okay? And I'm going to do the problem here, but you need to look through and find the story problem that this goes with, okay? And I've got it set up, and you'll see that there are different aspects in here that I've added in as I went through. But I want you guys to figure that out for yourself, since I went through and put the equation together. And remember, the numbers are probably going to be different, so it's going to be a little more difficult. So the first thing I do is I follow PEMDAS, okay? I look at this and I realize I've got multiplication here. Everything else is addition. This is going to take a lot of steps all the way down. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply here. Now, when I multiply here, I get 0 and 1500ths, okay? Plus 13 and 6700ths, plus 0 and 500ths x. This equals 14 and 1700ths minus 0 and 1200ths x. Now, what I notice right here right away is when I separate these terms, these two can be combined. Everything else in here cannot be combined yet, okay? So when I combine these two, I end up getting 13 and 8200ths. Is that right? Yeah, 13 and 8200ths. Plus 0 and 5/10ths x equals 14 and 1700ths minus 0 and 1200ths x. Okay, now we need to evaluate here again and make sure we're not getting negatives. So in other words, when I look at this, I'm going, okay, this is less than this, and they're both positives. In order to get rid of the 13 and 8200ths, I'm going to have to subtract 13 and 8200ths. If I subtract 13 and 8200ths from 14 and 1700ths, I still have a positive. So I'm going to go through and do that first. So this is gone, right? Subtracted is 0. So the only thing that's left over on this side is 0 and 500ths x. Then I'm going to subtract. Remember, I can't do it on one side without doing it on the other. 8200ths, right? So I subtract these two, and when I subtract that, I get 0 and 3500ths. And don't forget, I still have this 0 and 1200ths x. Now, the thing is that this is a subtraction here. So when I go through and I do this, I'm going to add it in order to get rid of it. So I add 0 and 1200ths x. This is gone. The only thing left on this side is 0 and 3500ths. But I have to actually add it over here, 0 and 1200ths x. And that's going to equal 0 and 1700ths x, right? 0 and 1700ths x. Now, just like the last problem, when I go through this, I still have to isolate x. I need to find out what x is worth. So x is by itself. That means this is multiplication. I'm going to divide 0 and 1700ths. 0 and 1700ths divided by 0 and 1700ths, 1. It's gone. X is the only thing left over here, okay? But I have to divide this by 0 and 1700ths also, and we find out that we get approximately, so I need to erase this, it's approximately 2.0588. Now, this isn't my final answer. Remember, when you go through and read these, they will tell you what answer they wanted in. So make sure that you look at that before you go through and put the answer in. This one says round to the nearest 10th. Okay, so in other words, I need to round to this spot. That means I'm going to look at this 5. That means I'm going to round up. So my actual answer is approximately 2.1. And actually, for this story problem, it ends up being 2.1 hours. Okay, guys? So that ended up being the answer there. If you actually go through and get this challenge question, you have the same numbers as me, still rework it, guys. Don't be lazy. Go through and rework it so that you get the correct answer, okay? All right. That's all I got for you today. Let me know if you have any questions in class.